Okay, class, this is part 2 of the video on the week 5 slideshow. I'm going to try to move a little more quickly. And the goal here is to look at some images, mostly from vase paintings, of some of the Greek gods and some of the characters in Homer's Odyssey, and just talk about the flow of the narrative structure through those images. Let's come back to the questions that we ended with in the second part, or sorry, in the last video. The Greek gods are made in the image of human beings. That's that's a great achievement of Homer's poems, right, and of Greek culture, right, creating a pantheon of gods. The gods are made in our image. So what does that tell us about Greek ideals, right? If the gods in Homer's world are idealized human beings, well, what are the ideals of the Greek people, right? How did they live? What were their ideals for a good life? What mattered to them? What did they care about and why? And how is this reflected in their social customs, in their social structure, the hierarchy of the society? Um, okay. Maybe even more basic questions. What were some of their basic human struggles? What is it that Odysseus is struggling with? What are the human beings struggling with? What are the gods struggling with? And how do people try to resolve their struggles in this story? Okay, right. Odysseus' struggle is at the center of it, but he's not the only character, right? What struggles emerge? How do people try to resolve them? What does Homer's poem have to say about that? Okay, we talked a little bit about Zeus on last week. You know, the first day of talking about this text. Here's an image from this is a reconstructed image from a plate of Zeus, the father of the gods and men, and Hera, right, his wife, the goddess of childbirth and marriage. They don't have what you would call a kind of harmonious marriage, but in some sense they do, right? They stay together, right? But anyway, Zeus and Hera, here they are represented, right? The father, the patriarch, and the goddess of marriage, the goddess of childbirth, right? Think about the ideals that Zeus and Hera represent, right? The models that they present. They are flawed, just like us, but they are idealized versions of us. Here's Zeus with his lightning bolt. Again, I think I mentioned he was given this by the Cyclops during the war with the Titans. But this is the symbol of Zeus's power, right? The eagle, the lightning bolt, the aegis, sort of, he wears his shield, or like his garment is like a symbol of his power. Here is a vase, right? And you can see the painting on the vase. The Judgment of Paris. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with the origin of the war, but everything begins with this question of who is the most beautiful of them all. And Hera, the goddess of marriage, Zeus's wife, and Aphrodite, the goddess of love, and Helen, the queen of Sparta, who is the daughter of Zeus. they are the three top contenders for the most beautiful woman in the world. And Paris, the prince of Troy, who is a kind of playboy, a kind of lover, a beautiful man himself, he chooses Helen. He judges that Helen is the most beautiful. This obviously angers Aphrodite, but it especially angers Hera, because she knows that Helen is the daughter of Zeus, her husband, and so she has it out for Helen. She has it out for Paris, right? She's angry about everything. This is partly what begins the sort of the attraction of Paris for Helen begins here, and he sails to Sparta on a diplomatic mission, but his real purpose is to seduce and abduct Helen and bring her back to Troy. And so this sets in motion, right, the events of the Trojan War. Now it becomes about defending the honor of Menelaus, and all of the Greek kings, including Odysseus, have made an oath to defend the honor of the other Greek kings, and so they all sail together for Troy. But the backstory here is the kind of that Paris, before he pissed off the Greek kings by stealing Helen, he pissed off Hera, the goddess of marriage, by choosing, and Aphrodite, the goddess of love, by choosing Helen over them. So this tells us something about the sides that the gods take in the war, right? Who they side with. Here is a vase painting of the soldiers, the Greek and Trojan soldiers. I showed you this last week. Here's an image of the Trojan horse that Odysseus, the story from the Trojan War that sort of sticks with him and that he brings back to his people ultimately, is the story of the Trojan horse. This is what he's remembered for, right? He designed this giant horse as a gift to King Priam, the king of Troy, in the middle of the war. It was a kind of an offering of a gift, and Priam, being a kind of somewhat gullible old king, takes the gift. He wheels the giant horse into through the gates of Troy, but of course the horse contains all of the great warriors of the Greek army. So once the horse is inside, they leap out, and this is the beginning of the end for the Trojans, right? This turns the tide, and ultimately this marks the end of the road for the Trojans. The Greeks begin to slaughter them from within. Okay, they had been unable to breach the walls of Troy, to breach the gates of Troy, until Odysseus came up with the trick of the Trojan horse. Here's a statue of Odysseus disguised as a beggar. You'll meet him in book 13. He arrives on the shores of Ithaca, but he disguises himself as a beggar. And this is him with a gesture of supplication, of asking for something. Zeus, by the way, is the god of supplicants. He is the protector of strangers when they are on the road or at sea, when they are away from home. That is one of the roles that Zeus plays, right? So if you offend the supplicant, if you offend the stranger or the guest in your house, you are offending Zeus. Here's Penelope, Odysseus' wife, here in book 2, weaving her loom. Okay, and just see how much time. Okay, if you recall, the story that she tells the suitors is that, look, I will weave, I will decide which one of you to marry after I have been finished weaving a shroud for my grandfather, for Odysseus' father, sorry, for my father-in-law, for Odysseus' father, who is kind of in mourning, because Odysseus is gone, and so she's going to weave something for him as a kind of homage and a kind of way of showing respect for her husband's father. Anyway, but that's the story, that she's going to weave this for him, and when she's finished with it, she will decide which suitor to marry. But she weaves during the day, and then at night she unwinds it. So she never finishes this shroud that she's making for Odysseus' father. So she never decides which suitor to marry, right? So that's her trick. And the womb is one of the images of the kind of the wisdom of the female wisdom, female power, right? The weaving of the loom, right? The metaphor of weaving, the metaphor of the loom, is kind of represents something about the power and the wisdom of women, of the feminine. Right? She's weaving the plot. She is kind of controlling the story, controlling things behind the scenes. Right? But also there's a craft, right? Think about the craft of weaving and what that represents. Here's Telemachus, right? The son, the young man, going in book 3 to visit King Nestor, being greeted by King Nestor, being welcomed into the house of King Nestor. Telemachus brings gifts, right? Telemachus learns how to act like a good guest. He already knows, in some sense, his mother has taught him well. But we see things about hospitality here as he visits King Nestor, and King Nestor gives him gifts, right? Tells him stories. Most importantly, he shares information, wisdom, stories with Telemachus, right? This is sort of shaping him, shaping his mind, shaping his being. Here is an image of Menelaus, okay? Recovering Helen from Troy. Notice he's dropping the sword. Okay? When he arrives in Troy, he is angry at his wife. They fight a 10-year war. They defeat the Trojans. But now he has to make a decision whether he is going to bring Helen back as his wife after she has betrayed him, or whether he's going to kill her. Everyone in Troy wants her dead. The Trojans hate Helen because they have been the cause of their ruin. And Menelaus, his anger subsides here, right? This is the moment that we know he's not going to kill her. He has promised the Trojans, actually, that he will kill her to kind of right the wrong that she has done them. But unsurprisingly, right, Menelaus chooses to forgive his wife. Or, it's not clear how much he forgives her, but he doesn't kill her. Here he is dropping the sword, and he brings her home to Sparta. And in book 4, we see Menelaus and Helen together again, right? And interesting we see the relationship of the husband and wife, right? This has been a very difficult marriage, right? Helen left him for Paris, and now he brings her back, right? But to think about how, the back and forth of a marriage, how a marriage survives over time, what it takes to keep a marriage together, right? This is part of the story. But Telemachus is learning from Menelaus his struggles to get home, right? And Helen here helps the men sleep by giving them drugs, right? She has that power. These are drugs I think she got from Egypt, but she has the power to kind of, like Noah has the power of, the first cultivator of wine, consoling the hands of our labor, consoling the pain of our labor. Helen consoles us with her potions. So the pain of hard memories, the memories of all the people you've lost during the war, or the memories of everything you've lost, right? Helen helps with that. Right? That's one of her powers. She's also good with words. Right? She persuades Menelaus not to kill her. She persuades Menelaus to bring her home. Helen is very shrewd, very powerful figure in the story. But here is an image of Menelaus and Helen. So there's a lot of interesting stuff in book 4 where Telemachus, encounters Helen and also hears stories of Menelaus's return from the war and all of his struggles, right? He grapples with Proteus, like the old man of the sea, right? Who turns in, a shapeshifter. And so he tells the story of how he overcame Proteus and how he kind of tricked Proteus, how he found his way home to Sparta. And this is a model for Telemachus, because Telemachus is wondering about his own father, right? And what it will take for his father to return home, and the struggle that his father will encounter when he gets home, right? Having to deal with the suitors, having to kind of restore honor to his household. Menelaus went through something similar, right? He also had to restore honor to his household for different reasons, right? But he also had great struggles getting home, just like Odysseus. Okay, here's Odysseus and Calypso. We'll talk about this next week, but he meets Calypso. Sorry, he's been with Calypso for 7 years at the moment that we meet him in Homer's poem, right? We encounter Odysseus on the shores of the island of Ogygia, and here's Calypso with her flute, and Odysseus reclining. But he is weeping on the shores, longing for Penelope. But keep in mind, he's also been there for 7 years. Calypso is his lover. They are lovers. They have been lovers for 7 years. Calypso doesn't want to let him go. And as much as Odysseus wants to get home, he's pretty bonded to Calypso. And so it takes Hermes flying down, right, and basically giving an ultimatum to Calypso to let Odysseus go. Here is Odysseus and Princess Nausicaa on the shore of Scheria. This is the island he ends up on after he makes a boat with the help of Calypso, but Poseidon sees him on the sea and sort of smashes his boat against with waves, and so he washes up on shore. He barely survives, and here he is naked, and Nausicaa is there with the other women, and Athena is there. That's the goddess Athena, there to kind of make sure that Nausicaa knows how to interact with Odysseus in the right sort of way. So Athena is here kind of helping move things along. But Odysseus needs Nausicaa because he needs help to get to the castle, to get help from her parents. And Nausicaa is a young woman, and she is learning how to interact with men for the first time and how to kind of interact with society. And she is sort of coming of age, a kind of coming of age story for Nausicaa, right? Encountering the crazy naked guy on the shore and figuring out what to do, right? And they kind of negotiate with each other. They both need something from each other, and they negotiate. and she brings him to her parents with the help of Athena. Okay, we're gonna end here. I'll come back and make one more video. So this will be a 3-part video.